The house looked ordinary from the outside. A small place on a quiet street, where people waved at each other and kept their doors closed at night. No one would have guessed what kind of tension lived behind those walls. Inside, the air often felt heavy, even on calm days. The woman moved slowly now. Her pregnancy had changed her body and her routine. She tired easily, but she still tried to keep things normal. She cooked, cleaned, and rested when she could. She spoke gently, even when she was worried. The man she lived with had not always been this way. When they first built a life together, people saw them as a normal couple. There were smiles, plans, and shared dreams. But over time, pressure grew. Money worries, unmet expectations, and unresolved anger began to pile up. He started reacting to small things with sharp words. Silence in the house felt loud. The woman noticed a change, but she kept hoping it was temporary. She often told herself that stress does strange things to people. She believed that once the baby arrived, things would improve. She imagined calmer mornings, soft laughter, and a new beginning. That hope helped her sleep at night. It helped her ignore the warning signs she didn't yet know how to name. On the day, everything changed. Nothing seemed unusual at first. The morning passed quietly. The woman spent time resting, feeling the gentle movements inside her. Those moments made her smile. She placed her hand on her stomach and whispered promises about the future. She thought about names, birthdays, and the life she wanted to give her child. The man came home later than expected. His mood was tense. He spoke little, moving through the house with quick steps. She sensed something was wrong, but chose her words carefully. She asked if he was okay. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was sharp. It felt like a door slamming shut. What started as a simple conversation slowly turned into an argument. There was no shouting at first, just raised voices and frustration. She tried to calm things down. She reminded him she was tired. She reminded him about the baby. But her words didn't reach him the way she hoped. He paced the room, angry and restless. Old issues came back up, things that had never truly been resolved. The air grew thick with tension. She felt her heart beating faster. A quiet fear settled in her chest, though she didn't fully understand why. She stood up slowly, holding on to the back of a chair for support. She wanted space. She wanted the argument to end. She suggested they talk later, when emotions were calmer. That suggestion seemed to make him angrier. His face changed. The calm she was trying to protect slipped away. The moment that followed happened faster than she could process. His anger exploded. The distance between them disappeared. Panic filled her body. She tried to speak, to move, to protect herself and her unborn child. Her thoughts scattered. Time felt strange, like it stretched and collapsed all at once. She struggled to breathe. Her body reacted on instinct. Fear flooded her senses. Her mind focused on one thing only: survival. She thought about her child. She thought about staying alive. Every second felt endless. Her strength faded quickly. Her body grew weak. Sounds around her became distant, like they were coming from another room. Her vision blurred. She felt herself slipping, unable to fight any longer. Then there was nothing. Silence filled the room. The man stepped back, breathing hard, his anger replaced by shock. He stared at her still body, not fully understanding what had happened. The weight of his actions began to sink in. Panic took over. He checked for signs of movement. There were none he could see. Fear wrapped around him tighter than the anger ever had. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and called for help. His voice cracked as he tried to explain. Words came out rushed and confused. Outside, neighbors went about their evenings unaware. Inside, time stood still. The woman lay unmoving, her body quiet, her life hanging in a fragile balance. When emergency responders arrived, the atmosphere changed instantly. Their movements were quick and professional. They assessed her condition with serious expressions. The room felt colder somehow. After careful checks, one of them spoke the words that no one ever expects to hear. She showed no clear signs of life. The statement felt final, heavy, and unreal. The man collapsed into himself, unable to process what was happening. She was placed onto a stretcher. Her body felt still and fragile. As they moved her out of the house, neighbors began to gather. Whispers spread. No one knew the full story, but everyone sensed something terrible had occurred. The ambulance doors closed. The siren cut through the night, loud and urgent. The street that had once seemed peaceful was now filled with shock and confusion. As the vehicle pulled away, no one could imagine what would happen next. What seemed like the end of her story was not truly over. Inside the moving ambulance, something was about to change everything. Inside the ambulance, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. The paramedics moved with focus, their training guiding every action. One of them kept checking her pulse again and again, refusing to give up too quickly. Another monitored her breathing and adjusted the equipment. Even though the first assessment at the house had been grim, they continued working. Sometimes, in rare moments, the body surprises everyone. The vehicle moved fast through traffic. The siren echoed through the night, clearing the road ahead. Inside, seconds felt important. One paramedic leaned closer and noticed something small. It was faint, almost easy to miss. A slight response. A tiny sign that her body was still fighting. "Wait," the paramedic said firmly. They checked again. There it was. A weak but real sign of life. The energy inside the ambulance shifted immediately. What felt hopeless just moments ago now felt urgent in a different way. They began advanced life-saving efforts without hesitation. Their movements were careful but fast. They spoke to her, even though she could not respond. They encouraged her to keep fighting. One of them later said that in moments like this, you talk to the patient as if they can hear you, because sometimes, somehow, they can. Her body responded slowly. It was not dramatic. There was no sudden movement or clear awakening, but the monitors began to show improvement. A weak rhythm appeared. It was fragile, but it was there. The paramedics looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They were not transporting someone who was gone. They were transporting someone who still had a chance. They radioed ahead to the hospital, explaining the situation clearly. The emergency team prepared for immediate arrival. Every minute counted. Meanwhile, back at the house, police officers began securing the scene. The man sat on the floor, his back against the wall, staring into nothing. His earlier anger had disappeared. In its place was fear and disbelief. Officers asked questions, but his answers came slowly. He seemed shocked by what had happened, as if he was watching someone else's life fall apart. Neighbors stood outside, whispering softly. Some recognized the ambulance crew. Some recognized the couple. Everyone tried to make sense of what they were seeing. A few people shook their heads, unable to understand how things could turn so serious so quickly. At the hospital, doctors and nurses waited at the emergency entrance. When the ambulance doors opened, the team moved quickly but calmly. She was rushed inside on a stretcher. Machines beeped softly as they continued to monitor her condition. Doctors worked together, checking her breathing, her heart, her brain activity. Because she was pregnant, there was another life to consider. A separate team checked for signs from the baby. The room was full but organized. Everyone had a role. One doctor later described the moment as balance between hope and uncertainty. They did not know how long her body had been without strong oxygen flow. They did not know if there would be lasting damage, but they refused to assume the worst. After intense effort, her condition stabilized enough for further tests. She remained unconscious. Her body looked peaceful, almost as if she were sleeping. But the machines around her told the real story of how close she had come to not returning. In the waiting area, her family arrived. The phone calls had been short and frightening. They rushed to the hospital with heavy hearts. When they were told she had briefly been declared without signs of life, but was revived in the ambulance, they struggled to process it. One family member began to cry quietly, both from relief and fear. Another sat down, hands shaking, whispering prayers. The words revived in critical condition, repeated in their minds. A doctor finally stepped into the waiting area. His face was serious, but not hopeless. He explained that she was alive. He explained that she was stable for now. He also explained that the next 24 hours would be very important. Then came the question everyone was afraid to ask. What about the baby? The doctor paused gently before answering. He told them there was a heartbeat. It was steady at that moment. They would continue monitoring closely. Relief washed over the room. It was not complete relief, but it was something to hold on to. Back at the police station, the man learned she had survived. The news hit him in a way he did not expect. Part of him looked stunned. Another part seemed overwhelmed. Officers continued their investigation carefully. Statements were taken. Evidence was collected. What had happened inside that house would now become part of a legal process. As the night turned into early morning, the hospital room remained quiet except for the soft sounds of medical equipment. Nurses checked her vitals often. Doctors reviewed scans and results. They searched for any signs of brain injury. The longer she remained stable, the more hope grew. Still, uncertainty lingered. Survival was one thing. Recovery was another. Hours passed. Family members took turns sitting beside her. They spoke to her softly. They told her she was strong. They reminded her that she was not alone. One person held her hand gently, careful not to disturb the tubes and wires. They talked about the baby, about how much she was already loved. In moments like this, time moves strangely. Every minute feels long, yet the hours blur together. Doctors continued testing reflexes. They checked her pupils. They watched for any small sign that her brain was responding normally. Late the next afternoon, there was a slight change. It was subtle but real. Her fingers moved. A nurse noticed first. She leaned closer, watching carefully. Then it happened again. A small movement, but intentional. The room filled with cautious excitement. The doctor was called in immediately. They spoke to her gently, asking her to squeeze their hand if she could hear them. After a pause, her fingers tightened slightly. It was a quiet miracle. She did not wake up fully that day, but her body was responding. That meant something very important. It meant her brain was active. When her family heard the update, they cried again. This time, the tears carried more hope than fear. Outside the hospital, news began to spread. Reports were careful, focusing on the seriousness of domestic violence and the unusual revival in the ambulance. People across the community reacted with shock. Some remembered seeing her walk through the neighborhood not long ago. Some remembered small conversations at local shops. It made the situation feel even more real. Inside her hospital room, she remained unaware of the conversations happening beyond those walls. She remained unaware of the investigation, the charges forming and the questions being asked. Her body was focused on one thing only: healing. Late on the second day, she began to wake up slowly. It was not dramatic. Her eyes opened only for a few seconds at a time. The bright hospital lights made her blink. Confusion filled her expression. A nurse leaned in gently and told her she was safe. The words were simple but important. "You're in the hospital. You're safe." She tried to speak, but her throat felt dry and weak. Instead, tears formed in her eyes. She looked down slightly, as if trying to remember something. Fragments of memory flickered in her mind. Raised voices, fear, darkness. The doctor stepped in and explained carefully that she had experienced a serious medical emergency but had been revived. He assured her that her baby still had a heartbeat. That piece of news broke through her confusion. A tear slid down her cheek. She placed her hand slowly over her stomach. In that moment, everything else seemed distant. She was alive. The baby was alive. But the reality of what had happened would soon return. For now, the hospital room remained calm. Machines continued their steady rhythm. Nurses continued their quiet watch. Family members stayed close. The fight was not over. Recovery would take time. Questions would need answers. Justice would move forward step by step. But in that ambulance, when hope seemed gone, a small sign had changed everything. And because of that moment, her story was not ending. It was only beginning again. The days after she woke up passed slowly. Each morning felt like starting over. She drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes aware of the room, sometimes lost in confusion. The hospital became her world. The steady sound of machines, the quiet footsteps of nurses, and the soft voices of family members blended together. Her body felt weak. Even small movements took effort. When she tried to sit up, her head spun. Doctors encouraged patience. Healing, they said, could not be rushed. At first, her memories came in pieces. Short flashes that made her chest tighten. A raised voice. A sudden fear. Then darkness. When those thoughts surfaced, her breathing changed. Nurses noticed right away and helped calm her. They reminded her she was safe now. Doctors explained what they could. They told her she had been without strong oxygen for a dangerous amount of time. They told her it was rare to recover as well as she had so far. But they also warned that emotional healing might be harder than physical healing. They checked her reflexes often. They asked her simple questions. What day is it? Do you know where you are? Each correct answer felt like a small victory. The baby was checked daily. Each time, the sound of the heartbeat filled the room with relief. That sound became her anchor, no matter how scared she felt. Hearing it reminded her why she needed to keep going. Her family stayed close. They took turns sitting beside her bed. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat quietly, holding her hand. Words were not always needed. Their presence alone brought comfort. When she was strong enough, doctors allowed her to walk a few steps with help. The first time she stood up, her legs shook. She felt embarrassed, but the nurse smiled and told her it was normal. Every step forward mattered. As her strength returned little by little, reality began to settle in. Questions she had pushed away started to surface. What exactly had happened? Why did it happen? And what would happen next? A hospital counselor visited her. The counselor spoke gently and explained that trauma often comes with confusion, fear, and even guilt. She was told none of this was her fault. Hearing those words helped, but they did not erase the pain. Police officers arrived one afternoon, calm and respectful. They explained who they were and why they needed to speak with her. They told her she could take breaks and stop at any time. Her heart raced as the conversation began. She shared what she could remember. Her voice shook, but she continued. She spoke about the argument, the fear, and the moment she felt herself losing strength. The officers listened closely, taking careful notes. They did not rush her. Afterward, she felt exhausted. Reliving those moments drained her more than any physical effort. A nurse helped her rest, reminding her she had done something important. The investigation moved forward quietly but steadily. Medical reports supported her account. What happened inside the house was now clear to authorities. Charges were filed. The legal process began. She learned that the man was no longer free. The news brought mixed emotions. Relief came first, then sadness, then confusion. She wondered how the person she once trusted had become capable of causing so much harm. Therapy became part of her routine. At first, she didn't know what to say. Sitting in a quiet room with a stranger felt strange. But slowly, she opened up. She talked about fear, about warning signs she wished she had understood sooner, and about the pressure to keep things together for the sake of family. The therapist helped her understand that abuse often grows quietly. It doesn't always start with violence. It starts with control, anger, and fear that slowly become normal. Those conversations changed how she saw the past. She began to recognize moments she had once brushed aside. Moments when she felt small. Moments when she felt afraid, but stayed silent. Physically, her body continued to heal. Bruises faded. Her breathing improved. Doctors reduced the number of machines connected to her. Each improvement gave her more confidence. Still, nights were hard. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, nightmares often followed. She woke up shaking, her heart racing. Nurses responded quickly, offering reassurance and grounding her in the present. One night, she placed both hands on her stomach and focused on slow breathing. She whispered to the baby, promising safety. That quiet moment gave her strength. As weeks passed, she was moved out of intensive care. The new room felt brighter, less frightening. It was a sign of progress. Family members smiled more easily now. Laughter slowly returned, though it was softer than before. Doctors talked about long-term recovery plans. Physical therapy, counseling, and follow-up care would continue for months. They encouraged her to focus on stability and support. She began writing in a small notebook. At first, it was just short thoughts, feelings she couldn't say out loud. Over time, those pages filled with reflections. Writing helped her make sense of what she had survived. She also learned about support groups. Other survivors shared their stories. Listening to them made her feel less alone. Their strength inspired her. Outside the hospital, the case continued. Court dates were set. News coverage remained careful. The focus stayed on awareness and prevention rather than blame. One afternoon, she was finally cleared to leave the hospital. The moment felt unreal. Walking out of those doors was both exciting and frightening. The world outside felt different now. Family members helped her settle into a safe place. Doctors made sure she had everything she needed. She was no longer surrounded by machines, but she knew the real work was just beginning. She stood by a window that evening, looking at the sky. Her body still felt fragile, but her spirit was growing stronger. She thought about the baby, about the future, and about the choices she would make moving forward. She knew life would never be exactly the same, but she was still here, and that mattered more than anything. Life outside the hospital moved differently than she remembered. Sounds felt louder. Simple tasks felt heavier. Even walking into a room with unfamiliar faces made her heart race. But each day, she reminded herself that she was safe now. She was no longer trapped in that house or that moment. Her days slowly filled with appointments, doctor visits, therapy sessions, meetings with people who wanted to help her rebuild a sense of control. Some days were easier than others. On good days, she felt hopeful. On hard days, fear crept back without warning. The legal process became more real as time passed. Letters arrived with official language that felt cold and distant. Court dates were scheduled. Paperwork explained what would happen next. Reading those documents made her hands shake. Seeing everything written down forced her to face the truth in a new way. Her lawyer spoke to her carefully, making sure she understood each step. She was told she did not have to rush. Her well-being came first. Still, she knew that facing the process was part of moving forward. The first time she entered the courthouse, her chest tightened. The building felt large and unfamiliar. The hallways echoed with footsteps and quiet conversations. She held on to a family member's arm for support. Inside, she avoided looking around too much. She focused on breathing slowly, reminding herself that she was not alone. When she finally sat down, she felt the weight of everything she had been carrying settle in her shoulders. When the man was brought into the room, she felt a rush of emotions she had not expected. Fear came first, then sadness, then a strange sense of distance. He looked smaller somehow, not powerful, not in control, just human. She did not meet his eyes for long. She didn't need to. What mattered now was her truth. The court proceedings moved carefully. Medical professionals explained what they had seen. Paramedics described the moments in the ambulance. Their calm voices contrasted with the seriousness of their words. Each statement confirmed how close she had come to not surviving. Listening was difficult. Hearing others describe her condition from the outside made her feel exposed. At times, she closed her eyes and focused on the sound of her own breathing. When it was her turn to speak, the room felt very quiet. She stood slowly, her hand shaking slightly. She took a moment before beginning. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew steadier as she continued. She spoke about the fear, about the confusion, about how quickly everything changed. She talked about the baby and the thoughts that filled her mind in those final moments. She did not exaggerate. She did not raise her voice. She simply told the truth. There were moments when she had to pause. Tears formed, but she did not stop. Finishing her statement felt like releasing a breath she had been holding for a long time. The courtroom remained silent when she finished. Even the smallest sound seemed louder than usual. The defense spoke next. Their words felt distant to her. She focused on staying grounded, on reminding herself where she was, on remembering that this process existed to protect her, not harm her. Days turned into weeks. Each court appearance took emotional energy. Some nights, she lay awake replaying the events in her mind. Other nights, she slept deeply, exhausted from carrying so much. Therapy became more important than ever. She learned techniques to manage panic. She learned how trauma can live in the body long after danger has passed. Slowly, she began to understand that healing was not a straight path. Outside the courtroom, people began to reach out. Some were friends she hadn't spoken to in years. Others were strangers who had heard about her story. Messages of support reminded her that she was not invisible. She was careful about how much she shared. Protecting her peace became a priority. Not every question needed an answer. As the trial moved forward, she focused on her pregnancy. Doctor visits showed positive progress. Each appointment brought reassurance. Feeling the baby move reminded her of life continuing forward. She spoke to the baby often, sometimes out loud, sometimes only in her thoughts. She promised safety. She promised love. Those promises helped her stay strong. The day the verdict was announced arrived quietly. She woke up early, unable to sleep. Her stomach felt tight. She dressed slowly, choosing comfortable clothes. She wanted to feel grounded, not distracted. In the courtroom, time seemed to slow down. Every sound felt sharp. When the decision was read, she listened carefully. The words confirmed what she had hoped but feared to expect. The verdict acknowledged the truth of what had happened. She felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Relief came first, then exhaustion, then a deep sadness for the life that could have been different. She did not celebrate. She did not feel joy. What she felt instead was closure, a sense that her voice had been heard. The sentence followed later. It reflected the seriousness of the harm caused. Hearing it made the situation feel final, in a way nothing else had. As she left the courthouse that day, the air outside felt different. Lighter, somehow. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This chapter of her life was closing. Recovery was still ongoing. Healing would continue long after the courtroom emptied. But she had faced something she once believed she could not survive. That realization stayed with her. She was no longer defined by what was done to her. She was defined by what she endured. And with each step forward, she was reclaiming her life. Life did not suddenly become easy after the court case ended. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came slowly in quiet moments, in small choices made every day. Some mornings she woke up feeling strong. Other mornings she felt tired before the day even began. She learned to accept both kinds of days without judging herself. Her body continued to change as the pregnancy moved forward. Each week brought new sensations, new worries, and new hope. Doctor visits became routine. Each visit ended with reassurance that the baby was growing well. Those words mattered more than anything. She focused on creating a safe environment, a calm place where fear would not live. Family helped her prepare. They painted walls, set up furniture, and filled the space with warmth. Every small detail felt meaningful. Therapy remained part of her life. She learned how trauma can show up unexpectedly. A sound, a smell, or a sudden memory could bring her heart racing back. Instead of fighting it, she learned to pause, breathe, and remind herself that the danger was over. She also learned forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It did not mean excusing what happened. It meant choosing not to let the past control her future. That understanding gave her peace. As the due date approached, emotions grew stronger. Excitement mixed with fear. Joy mixed with memories. She worried about labor, about being strong enough, about doing everything right. Those worries were normal, she was told. On the day labor began, she felt nervous but prepared. Family stayed close. Medical staff treated her with care and patience. The hours passed slowly, but she focused on breathing and staying present. When the baby was finally born, the room filled with quiet emotion. She held the tiny body close, feeling warmth and movement against her chest. Tears filled her eyes. In that moment, the world felt still. She had survived. The baby was healthy. That single moment made every hard day feel worth it. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Sleepless nights, soft cries, and gentle moments filled her days. It was exhausting, but it was real. It was life continuing forward. She learned how strong she truly was. Strength did not mean never feeling afraid. It meant showing up even when fear was present. People sometimes asked how she managed to move on. She did not always know how to answer. There was no simple explanation. Healing was not something she finished. It was something she practiced. She chose to speak carefully about her experience. When she did share, she focused on awareness. She wanted others to recognize warning signs before it was too late. She wanted people to know that help existed. Her story reached more people than she expected. Messages arrived from those who felt seen by her words. Some said they had found the courage to ask for help because of her story. Those messages reminded her that pain could be transformed into purpose. She remained mindful of her boundaries. Protecting her peace became a priority. She focused on what mattered most: safety, healing, and love. Watching the baby grow brought joy she had never known before. Each smile, each small sound felt like a gift. She promised herself that her child would grow up in a home filled with kindness and stability. There were still difficult days. Anniversaries brought memories. Certain places brought discomfort. But those moments no longer controlled her. She faced them with tools she had learned. She built a future step by step: education, work, support networks. Each step made her more confident. One quiet evening, she sat holding the baby near a window. The sky outside slowly changed colors as the sun set. The room was peaceful. She thought about how close she had come to losing everything. She also thought about how far she had come. Survival was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new one. She no longer measured her life by what happened to her, but by what she chose to do afterward. Her journey became a reminder that even after unimaginable pain, life can continue, hope can return, strength can grow. And sometimes, when everything seems lost, a second chance arrives quietly. All you have to do is keep breathing, keep choosing to live, and keep moving forward one day at a time.